Good morning, everyone.
Good morning, Rabbi.
We are learning Mishnah Shabbos, Parak Vav, Chapter 6, Mishnah Beis, Mishnah 2. Okay. Here again, we're talking about things that a person may not wear in the public domain, midrabanan, according to rabbinic law, even though according to Torah law, there'd be no problem wearing it. They are considered garments. Therefore, they're not considered a burden, a masa, a burden. Midaraisa, you'd be able to wear these things in the public domain, but midrabanan, you may not. I'd like to dedicate this morning's learning in memory of my mother, Mishna Rabinowitz. The name should be an aliyah for a neshama. A man may not go out with nailed sandals. Now, the story here is that there used to be these sandals kept together with nails, and the way I understand it, right, these nails protruded a bit out of the shoe. Okay, so the nails kept the shoe together, but they protruded out of the shoe a little bit. So what's wrong with this? I mean, it's a regular shoe. What's the matter with it? So the Bartanur explains, based on the Gemara, that there's a very tragic story that took place with these sandals. The way it goes is that a group of people wearing such sandals were gathered in a cave to hide from enemies. And when they heard noises from above, they panicked, fearing that they had been discovered and they wanted to escape. And in the stampede that followed, many were killed because of the nails in their sandals. That's the story. Somehow or another, because they were all rushing to get out, those nails that protruded out of the sandals caused a lot of deaths. I used to think for some reason that the answer is they actually took their sandals off and kind of like went at each other so that they should be able to get out ahead of the other person. It doesn't say that. What it says is that many people were killed because of the nails in the sandals, which I'm assuming because they protruded out a little bit. And therefore, because of that tragedy, the Chachamim instituted that on days when people gather together, like Shabbos and Yontif, you may not wear those kind of shoes.
Like hobnailed boots or something?
Something like that. I don't know exactly. The point is, by those hobnailed boots, do they stick out a little bit? The nails? Okay. So that would be an example. But the point is, during the week, they didn't say you can't wear these shoes. It's only specifically on Shabbos and Yontif, because those are the days where people gather together. So I guess the Chacham again were concerned that there could be some kind of a stampede when people gather together, and therefore to prevent any kind of problems, any kind of danger that could arise from that, they said no wearing those shoes. Okay. You may not go out on Shabbos in the public domain wearing one shoe when there is no wound on your foot. That means, let's say you can only find one shoe. So you figured, all right, I'll just wear one shoe. So you go out on the street on Shabbos wearing one shoe. Then people look at you wearing only one shoe and they start snickering at you. Because of that, we're afraid you're going to take off the other shoe and carry it in a public domain. Now, however, if let's say on the foot that your shoe is not on, there is obviously a wound on it, so people could see there's a wound, they're not going to make fun of you, and therefore there's no concern. So means you cannot go out wearing one shoe when there is no wound on the foot without the shoe. You cannot go wearing tefillin. Now, why are you wearing tefillin on Shabbos? It's a good question, but you are. And the question is, so now, number one, so what's the problem? Is it considered carrying? So according to some, since there is no mitzvah tefillin on Shabbos, it is carrying. You can't call it a garment. Others disagree and say, no, it's still considered a garment. Nonetheless, the problem is, in case you have to go to the bathroom, you have to take the tefillin off. We're afraid once you're going to take the tefillin off, right, you're going to keep them off and carry them home, carry them with you. So therefore, no wearing tefillin on Shabbos. Nor can you go out wearing an amulet when it was not made by an expert. The amulets were pieces of parchment that had on them prayers and holy names written on it, and people typically wore them for refuah, for being healed. So wearing such a thing, when an ill person wears such a thing, it's like wearing an ornament. It's considered something that is normal for this person. It's a need, and it's normal for him to wear. Therefore, is there a problem of wearing it outside in the street on Shabbos from a Torah point? No, there isn't. The problem is, well, the problem is like this. The problem is that in a situation where the point the Mishnah says is an amulet not from an expert. There were people who wrote amulets. You know, what the chachma was the wisdom in that was, I'm not sure exactly, but there was something to it. Okay. So if you have an amulet and it's written by a mumcha, by an expert, then my understanding is that, you know, people, you know, really feel that works. And therefore, the Chachamim said you can go out in the street wearing that. That's just like any other ornament. However, if let's say you're talking about, and even if that amulet, right, doesn't have any track record, you know, meaning that whatever he wrote, right, there's no track record that's going to work, but he has a good track record. He has written 3 other amulets that have worked for people, right? If that is what he did, right, he healed 3 other people with other amulets that he wrote, then he's a mumchik, considered an expert. And any amulet that he writes, you can wear outside the street on Shabbos. But it's not from an expert, right? The person who wrote it doesn't have that, didn't gain that, you know, status of being an expert because he didn't heal 3 people. So then, hold on a second. I didn't see anybody say that here. But if it's not from a mumcha, it's not from the person who's considered an expert, then you can't wear it outside. The reason being for that, I didn't see clearly explained here, but if it's from an expert, we consider it a burden. Now, the thing is that the Mishnah at the end says that in all these cases, you're not going to be chayav a chatas, you're not going to be chayav a sin offering, which means midaraisa you could wear it. So apparently, if it's not from an expert, which therefore it doesn't have that same, so to speak, status of working, so then the Chachamim said maybe it means that it looks like a burden. But that's the meaning of this part of the Mishnah. What talks about the amulet, not from the expert. You want to ask something?
I've heard, going back to the previous subject, I heard a story of someone who found some on Shabbos, found tefillin abandoned.
That's a different story. That's different halacha. That's a whole different story. You find it abandoned. It says you can put them on. That's a whole different halacha.
Okay.
We'll eventually believe we'll get there. Okay. Now, Mishnah continues. V'loi b'ashir yain, you cannot go out wearing. Shir yain is translated as a coat of armor. Okay. V'loi b'kasta, nor wearing a helmet. V'loi b'magafayim, nor wearing iron leg plates. These were all worn by people who were going out to war.
Right.
Okay. Now, this guy on Shabbos decides, you know, he wants to put on his armor.
Well, it's a dangerous
Okay, he wants to put on his armor. So we say, no, you can't do that. Why? Not because it's carrying. It's considered a garment. And actually, for the soldier, it's considered, it's considered an honor, a distinction. It's not considered carrying. It's considered a garment. Nonetheless, the problem is that it looks like you're going to war. And on Shabbos, going to war has its limits. There are situations where you can go into war. It talks about, Shulchan Aruch talks about if a city was all of a sudden surrounded, you know, or, you know, there's some kind of issue. There are situations where halach allows war on Shabbos. But here's this guy walking around wearing his armor. No one knows of any issues any issues. And therefore, it's going to look like he's going out to war on Shabbos when he's not supposed to. And therefore, he may not wear it. The Mishnah concludes, if you go out wearing it, you are not going to be liable for a sin offering. Again, that's if you do it unintentionally. You're not going to be chayav, you're not going to be a sin offering because, according to Torah law, there is no problem wearing these things out in the street. It's not considered, according to Torah law, carrying. It's only because of a rabbinic decree that you may not do these things. Which is interesting to note because, again, it's like, you know, like I say, I'm just going to bring up this point. How many people walk around wearing armor? Nonetheless, it is something that is worn, I guess, something that it's a garment. It's a protective garment. And therefore, and maybe you should ask, sometimes people do walk around wearing it. But again, it's considered a garment. It's not considered carrying, and it's only usher midrabanan. Have a wonderful day.
So
and that